The nurse at my IVF clinic froze when she saw my husband walk through the door. I had been sitting in the consultation room for 20 minutes, filling out forms, signing consents, doing all the tedious but necessary paperwork that comes with starting fertility treatment. The room was clinical but warm, soft lighting, comfortable chairs, a box of tissues on every surface, because this was a place where dreams were made and broken in equal measure. My husband Marcus was running late. He had texted that traffic was bad, that he would be there soon, that I should start without him. I hadn't thought anything of it. But when the nurse, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and steady hands, glanced up at the sound of the door opening and saw Marcus walking down the hallway, something changed in her face. She went pale. Her hands, which had been efficiently organizing paperwork, stopped moving entirely. And she looked at me with an expression I didn't understand, fear mixed with urgency, compassion mixed with something that looked almost like pity. "Mrs. Morrison?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." She glanced toward the hallway, where Marcus was stopping to check his phone, still 30 feet away. "Don't let him sign anything today." I blinked. "What?" "Why? He's my husband." She slid a printed form across the desk to me, the consent form I had been about to sign, the one that would authorize the IVF process to begin. "Read line 7. Now, before he gets here." My hands were steady as I picked up the paper. My mind was calm, still processing, not yet understanding why a nurse I had never met was warning me about my own husband. I found line 7, and my hands began to shake. "My name is Vivian Okafor Morrison. I am 34 years old. I was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the daughter of Nigerian immigrants who built a successful pharmaceutical distribution company from a single warehouse into an operation that now serves hospitals across 3 states. My parents taught me many things about trust, about verification, about the difference between what people show you and what they're actually doing. Trust but verify, my father used to say. In business and in life, people will tell you what they think you want to hear. Documents tell you what's actually true. I had trusted Marcus Morrison for 6 years. Now a document was about to tell me what was actually true. And it was going to destroy everything I thought I knew about my marriage. Let me tell you about line 7. The consent form for IVF treatment is a comprehensive document, pages of legal language covering everything from the medical procedures to the financial arrangements to the disposition of genetic material. Most people sign it without reading every word, trusting that their doctors and their partners have their best interests at heart. Line 7 was in a section labeled Genetic Material Designation. It read, "The undersigned parties consent to the use of donor genetic material as specified in Addendum C, with the understanding that the resulting embryos will be the legal offspring of the designated recipients as outlined in the attached agreement. Donor genetic material. Addendum C, designated recipients." I flipped to Addendum C with trembling fingers. And there it was in black and white. The donor providing genetic material for our IVF procedure was not listed as my husband Marcus Morrison. It was listed as Marcus's brother, Jonathan Morrison. The designated recipient of any resulting children was not listed as me. It was listed as Marcus's mother, Eleanor Morrison, as guardian with full legal custody upon birth. I was going to carry a baby conceived with my egg and my brother-in-law's sperm. And the moment that baby was born, it would legally belong to my mother-in-law. I had walked into this clinic thinking I was starting a family with my husband. I was actually being used as a surrogate for the Morrison family, without my knowledge or consent. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. "Mrs. Morrison?" The nurse's voice was gentle but urgent. "He's coming. You need to decide what you're going to do." I looked up and saw Marcus walking toward the consultation room, his phone now tucked in his pocket, his face arranged in the warm smile I had fallen in love with 6 years ago. The smile of a man about to betray me in the most intimate way possible. I had exactly 30 seconds to make a decision. I made it. I need to tell you about the 6 years that led to this moment. I met Marcus Morrison at a medical industry conference in Atlanta. I was there representing my family's pharmaceutical distribution company. He was there as legal counsel for a hospital network his family's law firm represented. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely impressed by my work rather than intimidated by it. In a world where successful women often found that their achievements scared men away, Marcus appeared to celebrate mine. "You're remarkable," he told me on our second date. "Building on your parents' legacy while creating something entirely your own. That takes courage." I was 32 when we met. I had focused on my career throughout my 20s, telling myself there would be time for marriage and family later. When Marcus appeared, handsome and supportive and eager to build a future together, it felt like the universe was finally delivering on its promises. We married after 18 months of dating. The wedding was elegant but intimate, my family's church in Winston-Salem, a reception at my parents' home, nothing like the elaborate society affairs that the Morrison family typically orchestrated. Eleanor Morrison, my new mother-in-law, had opinions about that. "Such a simple ceremony," she said at the reception, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I suppose that's the immigrant way. Practical." I should have heard the condescension in her words. I should have noticed how Marcus stiffened slightly but said nothing in my defense. I should have paid attention to the way Eleanor looked at me, assessing, calculating, finding me insufficient for purposes I didn't yet understand. But I was in love. And love makes you blind to patterns you would otherwise see clearly. The first 2 years of marriage were mostly happy. Marcus was a good husband in the conventional sense. He came home at reasonable hours, remembered anniversaries, supported my career. We talked about having children eventually, when the timing was right, when we had established ourselves more firmly. But there were small things that bothered me. The way Marcus deferred to his mother on every significant decision, where we would spend holidays, how we would invest our savings, even what kind of car I should drive. The way Eleanor inserted herself into our marriage, calling daily, visiting weekly, treating our home like an extension of her own estate. The way Marcus's brother Jonathan was always around, joining us for dinners, tagging along on vacations, present at every family gathering with an intensity that seemed excessive even for close siblings. I raised concerns with Marcus. "Your mother is very involved," I said carefully. "She's just excited to have a daughter-in-law. She always wanted a daughter. And Jonathan, he's at our house more than his own apartment. He's going through a rough time. The divorce hit him hard. He needs family support." I accepted these explanations because I wanted to believe them. Because the alternative, that something was fundamentally wrong with his family, was too disturbing to contemplate. But the signs kept accumulating. The fertility struggles began in year 3. We had been trying to conceive naturally for a year with no success. Tests showed that I was healthy, my eggs were viable, everything on my end was working correctly. The issue was Marcus. His sperm count was extremely low. His motility was poor. The fertility specialist explained gently that natural conception was highly unlikely and that even with IVF, using Marcus's genetic material would be challenging. I expected Marcus to be devastated. Instead, he seemed almost relieved. "This is actually good news," he said on the drive home from the appointment. "How is this good news?" "Because now we have options. IVF, donor sperm, adoption. My mother has connections with several excellent agencies. Your mother? Why would your mother be involved in our fertility decisions?" Marcus's face flickered, a moment of something that looked like guilt before he smoothed it away. "She's just trying to help. She knows how much we want a family. We haven't told her about the fertility issues." A pause. Too long. I may have mentioned something. "She's very supportive." I felt a chill run through me. "What exactly did you mention? And to whom?" "Just that we were having trouble. She offered to look into options." "That's all." That wasn't all. I knew it wasn't all. But I couldn't prove anything, and Marcus's reassurances were so smooth, so practiced, that I doubted my own instincts. That was my first mistake. My second was agreeing to let Eleanor help with the IVF process. "I know the best clinic in the state," Eleanor said during a family dinner. "Dr. Harrison at Carolina Fertility Associates. He's treated several women in my social circle. Discretion is paramount, which I know matters to you. We haven't decided on IVF yet, of course you have. It's the logical choice. And Dr. Harrison can expedite the process. I'll make some calls." I looked at Marcus for support. He nodded along with his mother. It makes sense, Viv. Mom knows people. Why not use her connections? Against my better judgment, I agreed. Now I was sitting in that clinic, holding a document that revealed exactly what those connections had been arranging behind my back. When Marcus walked into the consultation room, I had already made my decision. I was going to play along, not because I was weak, not because I was afraid, but because I needed more information. I needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before I made my move. The nurse had slipped the incriminating form back into the stack of paperwork, replacing it with a clean copy that didn't include Addendum C. She understood what I was doing. She was helping me. "Hey, babe." Marcus kissed my cheek and settled into the chair beside me. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was a nightmare." "No problem. I've just been doing paperwork." "Lots of forms, huh?" He glanced at the stack without really looking. "Well, that's the medical industry for you. Liability everywhere." So, are we ready? Ready to start our family?" He smiled that warm smile, the one I had trusted for 6 years, the one that now looked like a mask over something monstrous. I nodded sweetly. "Almost. We're just waiting for the doctor." "Great. Mom called this morning. She's so excited for us. She said to tell you she's praying for success." How thoughtful of her. I kept my voice neutral, my hand steady, my expression pleasant. Inside, I was calculating. The door opened and Dr. Harrison entered. He was a distinguished man in his early 60s, with the practiced warmth of someone who had delivered both good news and bad news thousands of times. He carried a tablet and a folder thick with papers. "Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, good to see you both." He sat across from us, arranging his materials. "Before we begin the formal consultation, I want to confirm some details from your preliminary paperwork." "Of course," Marcus said smoothly. Dr. Harrison looked at his tablet. "The genetic material for this procedure, let me just verify the designation." He looked up at me, then at Marcus. Then he said one word. "Jonathan." Marcus's smile froze. "I'm sorry. Jonathan Morrison. That's the designated donor for the genetic material, correct? Your brother." The room went completely silent. I watched my husband's face cycle through expressions: confusion, then shock, then fear, then the desperate scramble of a man whose carefully constructed lies were collapsing around him. "There must be some mistake," Marcus said, his voice tight. "I'm the father. This is our IVF treatment. Mine and Vivian's." Dr. Harrison frowned at his tablet. "That's not what the paperwork indicates. According to the documentation submitted by your mother's office, the genetic material is to be provided by Jonathan Morrison, and custody of any resulting children is to be transferred to Eleanor Morrison upon birth." That's not what we agreed to. It's what was submitted. Signed by you, witnessed by your mother's attorney. Marcus turned to me, his face pale. "Vivian, I can explain, can you?" My voice was calm, cold, nothing like the warmth I had shown him for 6 years. "This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you were planning to use my body to produce a baby for your mother, using your brother's sperm instead of yours, and then taking that baby away from me the moment it was born. Mom said it was the only way. The only way for what?" Marcus's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Dr. Harrison, at me, at the documents that had just exposed everything. "The Morrison family needs an heir," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Someone to carry on the bloodline. I can't, the fertility issues. Jonathan is the only option. And me? What was I in this plan? You're healthy. Good genetics. Mom said you were perfect for." He trailed off, realizing too late what he was admitting. Perfect for what? Being a broodmare for your family? It wasn't supposed to be like this. You were supposed to sign the papers without reading them. Most people don't read them. And then afterward, when the baby came, we would explain that it was better for everyone if Mom raised him. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. I wouldn't have to worry about raising my own child because your mother would steal it from me. Not steal. Transfer. Legally. With your consent. Consent I never gave. Consent I would never give. I stood up slowly. "Dr. Harrison, I want copies of all documentation submitted for this procedure." Every form, every signature, every communication from Eleanor Morrison's office. Mrs. Morrison, I'm not sure you can. Because what you just described is fraud, medical fraud, reproductive coercion, conspiracy to commit what amounts to human trafficking. I looked at Marcus, and my husband just confessed to all of it in front of a witness. Dr. Harrison's face had gone pale. I had no idea. The paperwork came through proper channels. Mrs. Eleanor Morrison is a major donor to this facility, a major donor who is using her influence to facilitate the theft of my potential children. I suspect that's the kind of thing that could destroy a medical practice, don't you? Dr. Harrison swallowed hard. I'll have copies of everything prepared immediately. Good. And I want the name of everyone at this clinic who handled the Morrison paperwork. Everyone who might have known what was really happening. Of course. Of course. Mrs. Morrison, I am so sorry. Not as sorry as you're going to be if I find out you were complicit in this. I gathered my things. Marcus stood up, reaching for my arm. Vivian, wait. Please. Let me explain. I pulled away from him. You've explained enough. You explained that your mother picked me out like livestock. You explained that your brother was going to father children using my body without my knowledge. You explained that you were planning to take those children away from me the moment they were born. It wasn't like that, it was exactly like that. And now you're going to explain it to the police. I walked out of that clinic with copies of every document, every email, every piece of evidence that Dr. Harrison's terrified staff could produce. Behind me, I could hear Marcus calling my name. I didn't look back. The investigation took 3 months. The district attorney was very interested in what I had brought them. Reproductive coercion, medical fraud, conspiracy. The Morrison family name might have protected them in social circles, but it couldn't protect them from federal charges. Eleanor Morrison was arrested at her estate on a Tuesday morning, led away in handcuffs in front of her garden club, which was meeting for their monthly brunch. The photographs made every newspaper in the state. Jonathan Morrison was arrested the same day at his office in front of colleagues who had no idea what he had been planning to do with his brother's wife. Marcus Morrison cooperated with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. He testified against his mother and brother, detailing years of family planning that treated women as vessels for Morrison heirs rather than human beings with rights and autonomy. I wasn't the first, it turned out. Investigators discovered that Eleanor had orchestrated similar schemes before 2 other women who had married into the Morrison family and been targeted for their genetic potential. One had miscarried before the plan could be executed. The other had divorced Jonathan years ago, never knowing why her mother-in-law had been so insistent that she try harder to get pregnant. The evidence was overwhelming. Eleanor Morrison was convicted of conspiracy, fraud, and reproductive coercion. She was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Jonathan Morrison was convicted of the same charges. He received 12 years. Marcus Morrison, in exchange for his testimony, received 5 years and lifetime registration as a reproductive offender, a new category of crime that my case helped establish. The nurse who had warned me, her name was Patricia, and she had worked at that clinic for 20 years, testified that she had seen the paperwork and recognized that something was wrong. She had risked her job to warn me, and I made sure that her courage was recognized. She received a commendation from the state nursing board. I made sure she never had to work for the Morrisons' money again. The divorce was finalized 2 months after Marcus's sentencing. I received everything: the house, the accounts, the investments. Marcus, facing prison and disgrace, didn't contest anything. His mother's fortune, seized as part of the criminal proceedings, was largely distributed to her victims and to organizations supporting reproductive rights. I didn't want the Morrison money, but I took it anyway. And I donated every cent to organizations that help women escape reproductive coercion, that support survivors of family fraud, that fight for the autonomy of women's bodies against those who would use them as instruments. The Morrison name, once synonymous with wealth and prestige in North Carolina, became synonymous with something else entirely: justice. My mother came to visit 6 months after the trials ended. She walked through my new apartment, smaller than the Morrison house, but entirely mine, and sat with me on the balcony overlooking the Winston-Salem skyline. "How are you really doing?" "Better than I expected. Worse than I pretend." That's honest. I've learned the value of honesty, especially after 6 years of lies. My mother was quiet for a moment. "Your father wanted me to tell you something." "What?" He said, "Tell her we're sorry we didn't see it sooner. Tell her we should have investigated the Morrisons before she married into that family. Tell her that her strength amazes us." I felt tears forming. "You couldn't have known." I didn't know. Marcus was convincing. Predators usually are. She took my hand. "But you survived. You fought back. You exposed them." That took incredible courage. It took a nurse who was willing to risk her job for a stranger. It took you being willing to listen, to see the truth when it was shown to you. Many women in your position would have signed those papers without reading, would have trusted their husbands, would have become victims. I almost did. Almost doesn't count. What counts is what you actually did. You protected yourself. You protected the children you might have had. And you made sure the Morrisons could never do this to anyone else. We sat in silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. "What happens now?" my mother asked. "Now I rebuild. I focus on the company. I remember who I was before I became a Morrison. And children? Is that still something you want?" I thought about the question carefully. Someday. Maybe. On my own terms. With my own choices. Not as part of someone else's breeding program. That's a healthy perspective. It's the only perspective I can have after what they tried to do. My mother squeezed my hand. "Your father and I are proud of you. Whatever you choose, whoever you become, we will always be proud." "I know, Mama. That's what got me through this." We watched the last light fade from the sky, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate hope of a woman trying to build a family with a man who is secretly planning to betray her. Real hope. The hope that comes from knowing your own strength, from surviving the unsurvivable, from emerging on the other side of darkness and finding that you're still standing. The Morrisons had tried to use me. They had failed, and I was still here, stronger than before. A year after the trials ended, I ran into Patricia, the nurse who had saved me, at a coffee shop. She looked different out of her scrubs, more relaxed, happier. "Vivian." "Oh my goodness, it's so good to see you." "Patricia." "I've been meaning to reach out. How are you?" "I'm wonderful, actually. I left the clinic after everything happened. Started working at a community health center. Less money, but I sleep better at night. I'm glad." We sat together, two women bonded by a moment that had changed both our lives. "Can I ask you something?" I said. "Of course. Why did you warn me? You didn't know me. You could have lost your job. You could have faced retaliation from the Morrisons. Why did you take that risk?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "My sister," she finally said. 20 years ago, she married a man from a wealthy family. They convinced her to sign documents she didn't understand. She ended up losing custody of her children, her home, everything. The legal system failed her because she had signed papers that took away her rights. I'm so sorry. She's okay now, but she spent years fighting to see her own children. Years of pain that could have been prevented if someone had warned her. Patricia looked at me with tears in her eyes. When I saw your name on those documents, when I saw what the Morrisons were planning, I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't stand by and watch another woman lose everything because no one told her the truth. You saved me. You saved yourself. I just gave you the information. You're the one who had the courage to act on it. We saved each other, maybe. Patricia smiled. Maybe we did. We finished our coffee and exchanged phone numbers. A friendship born from one moment of courage. The kind of friendship that reminds you that good people exist, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've ever had someone warn you about something that saved your life. Like and subscribe for more stories about courage, truth, and the power of paying attention. Don't let him sign anything today. That's what the nurse whispered when she saw my husband. Why? He's my husband. Read line 7. Now, line 7 of my IVF consent form showed that the genetic material wasn't coming from my husband. It was coming from his brother, and custody of any resulting children would go to my mother-in-law. I was being used as a surrogate for my own baby, without my knowledge, without my consent. My husband walked in smiling. Ready to start our family? I nodded sweetly. Then the doctor entered and said one word that made me realize whose baby this really was: Jonathan, my husband's brother's name. The plan was exposed. The family was arrested. And I walked out of that clinic with evidence that would send them all to prison. Don't let him sign anything today. 6 words from a stranger that saved my life. 6 words that exposed a conspiracy. 6 words that reminded me that good people exist, even in the darkest places.